So here, Bundesliga Matchday 29 has happened, and it's time to look back at everything. So we'll start on the Friday game, which was obviously between Augsburg and Hoffenheim. This actually ended 2-2. Well, basically Augsburg have nothing left to play for. Hoffenheim are actually slowly falling and slipping away from the Champions League spots. I mean, they're now down to 6th, and only a couple of weeks ago they were 4th. And that's because they've only won once in the last 7 games. And so they probably won't get Champions League football. It's considering the gap between them and Frankfurt, it is more than likely they'll be playing in the Conference League next season. So the Conference League is probably the best they're going to get. And yeah, to be honest, it's probably what they are worth as well. But they are now 5 points from 4th, and with how they've been playing recently, they dropped points and all of that, and I think that's a gap that they probably won't be able to close, especially with only 5 games remaining. But yeah, while for Augsburg, again, the season's over. They're safe. They're not going to slip towards the relegation zone, and the best they can do is probably just finish in the top half. For Dortmund, the standout game on Saturday was between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Leverkusen. It finished 1-0 to Leverkusen. But for Dortmund, this team is crap. They're so undeserving of the second place. Like, they play horrible football, and they're not even that good. I think over the past 3 games, they had 3 shots on target in total, which should tell you everything. And this is a team that should be second and challenging Bayern. Granted, from a points tally, it's worked. From everywhere else, like, what the hell are you doing? There's reports even saying that, yeah, they may finish second, but the prospect of it is horrible because, like, the points tally will lie because when they've played against teams around them, it's been horrible. Best shown here. I mean, they've lost. Granted, they did beat Leverkusen at the Bayern Arena, but they lost to them twice at home. And then you look at everywhere else of how they played, and I mean, Stuttgart last weekend is quite cowardly. But for Leverkusen, they're back on track. They'd actually struggled in recent weeks, especially defensively. So they conceded 6 goals against the bottom 2, who they played in the past 2 games, Heidenheim and Wolfsburg. And so the fact in this game they were able to restrict Dortmund to only 1 shot on target, it's a drastic improvement. And granted, however, attacking-wise, they weren't at their best either, because obviously the only way Dortmund they scored was because of a Rami Benzebaini mistake, who played it basically straight to Rob Andrich, who then scored. Because of this win, it now means they have their hopes of Champions League football back on track. They're just behind Leipzig and Stuttgart, who are kind of dueling it out in 3rd and 4th. So they will have to hope that they can kind of take advantage of if the other team is stumbling or whatever. Speaking of a team that is stumbling, it's Wolfsburg. They lost 2-1 to Eintracht Frankfurt, and there's a real possibility that they may actually finish last now because of Heidenheim experiencing some sort of like mini resurgence. They lost 2-1 to Eintracht Frankfurt. The result does them favours. I mean, it was 2-0 until they scored in the 97th minute. And for like their defending for most of these goals, they were genuinely horrible too. Like it's just looking increasingly more likely that they're going to get relegated, if we're being honest. Like, they're approaching Heidenheim levels of accepting that they're relegated, but the fact that Heidenheim are resurging means they could genuinely finish last. Well, for Frankfurt, things are coming together under Herbert Riera. I think if you look at the table since he took charge, they're actually in the top 4 now, which shows, despite like some of the more negative noise that may be surrounding the situation, they've actually been playing okay. But I mean, considering the situation and that he had very little time to like take over his team, it's positive. And obviously they may get European football, not through qualifying for it automatically through the additional places all over, which will help. And then I think it'd be interesting to see what they do next season. Obviously, one player that has been a standout is Arno Calamawendo. He's got 6 goals and 1 assist in 14 games since joining in the winter on loan. And he's scored in back-to-back games now too. And so he's definitely found his feet. And Frankfurt should really do what they can to activate the buy option in his contract, because then with that he will be moving, or he should be moving to Frankfurt in the summer. Because of Wolfsburg struggling, it means Heidenheim are now resurging, increasing the pressure on Wolfsburg. They are unbeaten in their last 3 games now. As I mentioned, they're closing in, they're only 2 points behind. They beat Union Berlin 3-1, which is quite an impressive result. It's a shame that they're doing this now when they're basically more or less relegated, so they can't mount some like unbelievable great escape. But the biggest story out of this game has got nothing to do with Heidenheim, and it's actually Union. So following the result, kind of out of nowhere, Union sacked head coach Stefan Baumgart. It's surprising because, they're not really in relegation trouble. They have been on the decline recently in terms of their form, but they've been okay. And so it was a bit surprised that they decided to get rid of him now, because genuinely they're not really going to get relegated. But the big story is what they have done is they've replaced Baumgart with Marie-Louise Etter, who is now the first female coach in Europe's top 5 leagues. She is meant to take charge of the women's team in the summer. She's also done well with the youth teams of the men's side at Union in the past, and then also she has been in joint charge of Union before, and now she's been given sole charge for the remainder of the season. Obviously this is a groundbreaking appointment when it comes to her being the first female coach. Obviously she's not the first female head coach in the German football pyramid. Obviously Sabrina Wittmann is head coach of Ingolstadt in the Dritte Liga, but obviously this is high profile in the context of the Bundesliga. And despite what some people may say, if you read about her, she's clearly very competent at her job, and it will be interesting to see how this pans out, and if she does well, and from now until the end of the season, who knows, and the Union may go, oh, we're actually not going to make you our women's head coach, we'll make you the head coach of our men's instead. Then elsewhere on Saturday afternoon, it was RB Leipzig versus Borussia Mönchengladbach. Leipzig beat Gladbach 1-0 thanks to a goal from Jan Diomande. However, for Gladbach, thanks to the help of Moritz Nicolas, they managed to keep the score down. Obviously, where Nicolas comes in is the fact he made 11 saves in this game, which is the second highest of the season. He holds the highest of the season too, with 12, which he made against Hamburg. And actually, with his 11 saves, it also means he's in the top 10 for most saves in a game in the Bundesliga. Obviously, the man who is leading that tally is former Borussia Mönchengladbach goalkeeper Jan Sommer. So yeah, obviously as well, the big talking point around this has been Rocker Reitz. He had agreed earlier last month that he would join RB Leipzig in the summer, and so this prompted a banner from the Borussia Mönchengladbach ultras criticising him. Later on Saturday, it was Bayern Munich versus St. Pauli, and this allowed Bayern to break the goal record in the season, which they did. So in the previous game, they had reached 101 goals, so they tied the record. They were 2 goals off the record in the previous game, or 2 goals off breaking it. The opener in this game from Jamal Musiala equalled the record, and then Leon Goretzka scored the record-breaking goal, which, considering the whole talk around Goretzka from the fans and just the whole situation surrounding him, quite fitting. This is a narrative you cannot write about Goretzka etching his name into history with Bayern Munich, when basically everyone that's a fan of the club hates him because of the way he plays. I think that's fitting. And just very funny. Then at the bottom on Sunday, it was a relegation 6-pointer between Cologne and Werder Bremen. A big win for Cologne. They won this 3-1. It means they did move 5 points clear of 16th. Overall, it really was a poor performance from Bremen. It didn't help. They went down to 10 men. And this happened when Marco Friedel played a poor pass. And then Ragnar Acker latched onto it, and he then had to foul Acker. And he was the last man, so it was a red. But overall, it was quite a poor performance from them, and they pretty much got pulled apart by Cologne. But because of the likes of St. Pauli and Wolfsburg not winning, it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. Obviously, you want to be winning these games, but for Bremen, obviously, they do have to win probably the next 2 games or whatever, and then they should be okay. That's not me. Or they need to win 2 more games, not the next 2, because I think they've got a pretty difficult run of games. I think, yeah. So Bremen's last 5 games against Hamburg, Stuttgart, Augsburg, Hoffenheim, and Dortmund. The Hamburg and Augsburg games they will have to win if they want to do as much as they can to stay up. They have to win those 2 games. Well, for Cologne, I think this more or less confirms that they're okay, because the margins are so fine, and like each team keeps making mistakes or whatever. They should be okay. Then there was Stuttgart versus Hamburg. It finished 4-0 to Stuttgart. It was an important win for them to stay in touch of the Champions League places, especially with Leipzig and Leverkusen now winning. And for Hamburg, they just kind of got pulled apart. It's quite obvious they did miss Luka Vuskovic. He was injured, and he could be injured with a couple of remaining games of the season, which could be a bit of a problem for Hamburg, especially if this is how they play. Adding to this, if this is how they play without Vuskovic, then next season could become a massive problem for them if they can't replace him adequately. Yeah, but overall for Stuttgart, this was kind of like a ruthless performance for them, especially considering what happened last weekend with Dortmund and how they weren't ruthless enough. This was obviously kind of a good reply to that. And then to round out the match day, it was Mainz versus Freiburg. It finished 1-0, but at the end of the day, for both of these teams, their focuses were quite clearly elsewhere. Both were in Europe and both won big. Last weekend, Freiburg against Celta Vigo in the Europa League, and Mainz against Strasbourg in the Conference League, and they both take big results away. So Freiburg in Spain, Mainz in France, and I think there's a real possibility that both teams could actually win the title or win the league, or not win those trophies, because if they've got a good chance to progress to the semi-final, and then the 2 teams they'll play in this, who they could potentially play in the semi-final, are winnable for like a Bundesliga side like Stuttgart and Hamburg. I think it will be interesting to see what happens with both Freiburg and Mainz, because obviously we've spoken about the coefficient before and how Germany are kind of lagging behind, but if you bring in this coefficient, or it could potentially improve chances of Germany getting the extra place, especially if they knock out Celta Vigo and just continually progress. And obviously it's great when you see a German team go on a run. Obviously Freiburg, it kind of gives you the same sort of vibes as when Frankfurt did it a couple of years ago. Obviously Freiburg, completely different side to Frankfurt. They don't have a major trophy to their name, so if they win this, it could be very special for them. So when it comes to the table, Bayern is still first, Dortmund is still second, Stuttgart are now third, Leipzig are fourth, both on 56, and 4 points behind them is Bayer Leverkusen on 52. Hoffenheim are then sixth, 1 point behind Leverkusen, but 5 behind fourth. And then at the bottom, it's Heidenheim on 19, Wolfsburg on 21, and then St. Pauli on 16th on 25, and they're 3 points behind Werder Bremen. And so next weekend, the standout game is Bayern versus Stuttgart. But then also you've got the Nord derby between Werder Bremen and Hamburg, which will be big for Bremen. And they need to win this. If they want to be able to survive, or at least have a good chance of surviving, they need to win this. Frankfurt then play Leipzig, Dortmund play Hoffenheim, which is another big one, but for Hoffenheim more so, as they look to regain some sort of footing in the race for the Champions League. So let me know what you think about the weekend, about the match day, if there was any teams that impressed you, or who impressed you, or just anything else overall.